May I have your attention? There was a handbag left in the ladies' room right next to the cafeteria. If it's anybody's here. Anyone? Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:03. First up, we have Roll call. Stuart Lander,
Here.
Kate Massonotti. Here. Michelle Brousseau,
Here.
James Restivo,
Here.
and I myself, Carol Vetter, am here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Next, I'd like to just call for a moment of silence as we remember the victims of the tragedy at Brown. Thank you. Our hearts and thoughts are with those families. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is time for student recognitions. So at this time, I would ask that members of the committee please join me in front. And it's my pleasure to ask our athletic director, Mr. Lynch, to the podium, please.
Thank you. Going to honor some of our student athletes tonight. I'm going to start off with our middle school Broad Rock boys soccer team. Coach, if I can grab you to come up, please. So Lucas Priority is our head coach. Jeff Sisson is our assistant coach. Did a great job this year. Our boys middle school team was the 7th ranked team in the state. Well, I won't explain it, but they ended up having being the 7th ranked team in the state in the playoffs. They ended up playing one home game. They beat who did we beat? We beat Hope Highlands, and then we went on the road and beat Feinstein, McCourt, which is up in Cumberland, and then we played Gallagher in the state finals at Cranston West, and they beat them 1-0. So we want to recognize our state championship team tonight. I'm going to call the guys up. Come on up here, and when you get it, Coach will give you a certificate. Shake everybody's hand. Wait over there because we'll do a picture. Okay? There's a long list, so please bear with me. And I know some of them aren't here, but I'm going to call everybody anyway. Conrad Björk. Jacob Mook. Sam Kelly. Joseph Totten. Theo Rogers. Jacob Menudo. Logan Gardner. Liam Moore Burns. Right here, first here. Sagan Sharp. Captain Jacob Cody. Adam Ishmael. Mac Anderson. Cooper Marr. Oscar Kincaid. Good job, guys. Kate Oakland. Crosby McCann. Colin Schneider. Luke Richard. Nathan Buard. Drew McGee. Drew, you dropped something. Oh, is that Colin? Okay. The next person I'm going to call, please, when he comes up, just be kind to him because his Notre Dame Fighting Irish didn't make the football playoffs this year, so I know he's really disappointed. Liam LeBlanc. Brennan Schweigert, captain. Alabama made it though. Liam, come shake hands over here. Ryan Sisson, captain. William Huffine, Aiden LeBlanc, Sean McGee, William Hames, Owen Griffin, Thomas McGuire. The 2025 Rhode Island Interscholastic League Middle School Boys State Soccer Champions. Congratulations. Congratulations. Jeff, get in the photo. At this time, I want to honor and recognize our fall All-State Providence Journal and Coaches All-State athletes from the high school. I'm going to start with Molly Clark and Tessa O'Sullivan. I don't know if Tessa's here. Molly and Tessa were first team All-State in tennis. They were the Rhode Island girls. Oh, I forgot I have to do something now. They were the Rhode Island girls doubles state champions. They were the number 2 seed coming in. They beat everybody along the way and beat the LaSalle number 1 team in the finals. So congratulations to them. Our next student athlete that we would like to recognize is Sebi Kostreva. Sebi's been named first team All-State in boys soccer. Congratulations. Sebi's also been selected to the coaches All New England team in soccer for the region. So congratulations. And then our next person we want to honor is Alexa Clark. Alexa's first team All-State in tennis. I just want to talk about her for a little bit. She's a four-time All-State selection in tennis. In dual matches, I should say, she was 61-0, not beaten. 2-time individual state champion. She'll play tennis at Holy Cross next year. So these are our All-Staters. We have 2 that are not here because of scheduling conflicts. We had Dante Pino, who's an All-State football player, repeat from last year. He was a junior. This year as a senior, he's an All-Stater in football. And Kai Soline, first team All-State in football. Kai was going to come, but our indoor practice facility, which is Curtis Corner, outdoors, has all snow on it, as you can imagine. So we sent them to URI tonight, and the only slot that we could get was 6 o'clock. So they had to practice over there. So I'd like to recognize them as well. And guys did a tremendous job. They not only, as our boys soccer team did, not only did they represent themselves, but they represented the town, their family, and their school in the first class manner that we hope and we expect. So tremendous job by all. Thank you.
And that concludes this evening's student recognition. While everyone is welcome to stay and enjoy local democracy at its finest, you may also feel free to exit and would not hurt anybody's feelings too much. So thank you all and congratulations again.
There wasn't anybody that signed the sheet for public comment. So we're going to close public comment at this time. That leads us to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. Hmm. Hey, that'll lead us to the superintendent report. I will turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we wait for it to come up, here it comes up nice and quick. The first, I have two items on the superintendent's report. The first is the personnel report, followed by the calendar survey update. Next slide, please. So again, this is talking about our recent leaves, retirements that will be announced at a different time. I would also, though, like to highlight one piece that I know will come to make many people at Broad Rock happy, and that is that we have secured a drama club advisor. We did not have internal candidates, and so it had to be externally posted, and it took some time. And so now with someone to take that position this year, we expect things to move rather quickly. So I just thank Principal McNeese on that, as well as welcoming our new drama club advisor to Broadway. Next slide, please. So the calendar survey update, the calendar survey is still open. It's open until this Friday. And in addition to being a little bit of an improved format, I hope the community finds that compared to last year. It did go out to the community at large, faculty and staff, as well as students. And the nice thing about that so far in terms of our results to date is that each one of these groups is in fairly tight alignment. With February and April vacations being the most important thing that they wish to prioritize, followed by the ending of the school year, if possible, before Juneteenth. And the least important thus far in the results across all groups is starting after Labor Day. Again, if folks will remember, for the general public who don't know, is that we have it's going to be very difficult to recreate this year's school calendar next year. Labor Day falls very late. We also have 2 election days that schools must be closed for, as well as an extended, once again, winter holiday recess. So we are looking to make sure that that we, in partnership with the community, as our mission says, that we create a calendar that works best for all of our families and students as much as possible. I've met with the teachers union on the calendar and don't see any obstacles or no major objections were being raised when this was presented. I do need to meet with our paraprofessional unit, bargaining unit, to have conversations, but a draft calendar will be coming out once RIDE promulgates their official recommended school calendar. That has not come out yet, so we are ahead of schedule. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and if there are none, that will conclude my report.
Do I have a motion to accept the superintendent report?
Mr. Pedraza, are we under any obligation to abide by RIDE's calendar?
No, we're not.
Okay,
No, we're not. The only consideration would be for those of our faculty, staff
who
who,
teach somewhere and send their kids somewhere else. I get it.
yep. Otherwise,
Yeah, my life.
well, yeah, the only caveat would be starting and end dates. So we must start or end by that, but that's governed by Rhode Island general law.
That I knew.
So
Thank you. I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
Terry didn't hear you. It was James.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Oh, that will bring us to item 6, school committee business. A discussion action. Fiscal year 2027 initial budget presentation.
thank you. So we did find some, as we were going through this afternoon, we did make some slight changes to some of the numbers. So this presentation, there should be an updated one, or if you have a digital copy, it should say updated with today's date following draft. That has been promulgated as well on board docs. And I will call attention to where the changes are once we get to those. It is in regards to this year's amount in state aid. So that will be on the revenue slide. And because that was incorrect, the total for revenue for this year's budget was thrown off. And those are the major changes. So this is a draft of what we are looking to potentially, or looking for input, guidance, questions, comments, concerns in advance of Thursday's joint meeting with the town council and school committee. Essentially, what we are doing is to kick off the budget season and talk about the things that are well on the agenda on the next slide. The agenda topics are the same as last year, which I believe was the same for the year prior. So stemming from CFO Patrick, or excuse me, Kilpatrick, when he was here. So I'll go through the presentation organization wise, and then if we need changes to the agenda or things needed to be added, condensed, we can do so at the conclusion, if that's okay with everyone. So ultimately, the presentation flows through the mission and vision of the budget process, unique considerations that to prepare taxpayers and the town council and elected officials for that the schools are or may be facing next fiscal year, our current enrollment and enrollment projections, our current staffing and historical staffing, our revenue and expenditures. We've changed this a little bit from last year in that so much of the historical aspect has been COVID influenced with dollars that are no longer there, positions that are no longer there. We had slides in there about how state aid is calculated. If those things are needed or necessary, we can either put them back in or at a future presentation, work those into future presentations once we've submitted a budget. So they've been removed for brevity and in terms of simplicity, because we are not presenting this evening or on Thursday a budget ask for FY 27. We're not there yet. So as such, some of those aspects have been removed because they are redundant in other presentations that occur. And then questions, even though we know that in terms of, or last year or the past couple of years, generally questions do come during the presentation, but a lot of those tend to get answered in some cases as we get through the presentation. So we will once again try to see if we can answer those depending on the flow of the meeting or at the end. So that's the rationale behind the agenda. Next slide, please. Most importantly, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we refer back to our mission and core values, as well as the priorities and goals of our in-process strategic plan. And so ultimately, highlighting the most important part of what we do, and that is a student and students, as well as the faculty and staff who help students to thrive every single day, is ultimately what we are trying to make sure the community is aware of, and that we will be referring back to numerous times throughout the strategic plan's tenure. Next slide, please. In terms of our mission and goals, it's really to continue building on progress. And these were the three building blocks that Mr. Kilpatrick and I last year put forward as to what ultimately what we're aiming our budget process, budget submission to be about. And we believe that we accomplished that to various degrees last budget cycle. So in terms of stability, ultimately we'll see on future slides that stability amongst cohorts at all grade levels. We'll talk about that some more with our enrollment slides. Leadership at our school and district level. Again, we are very fortunate to have consistent leadership at the school level. And I would just like to say I'm looking forward to the talent that has recently joined us at the district level and making sure that that falls under stability and keeping them with us. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, the 5-year strategic plan. Stewardship, again, I won't read it to the members of the committee. And responsiveness. The one part with responsiveness that I would like to highlight, even though we want to be responsive to data and trends. So as somebody much wiser than I said, we aim to be data informed, not data driven. We're not aiming for numbers. We want to have those numbers. We want to be informed by them to ultimately achieve our mission. And again, one thing that I will highlight and read off there is that stewardship, that ultimately all dollars are taxpayer dollars, and we are keenly aware of that. And all taxpayer dollars, whether you have children or not, go to the school system, and we are keenly aware of that. Next slide, please. But as I said, we're going to continue to build off of our mission, and the idea of this partnership, both the committee here as well as the strategic planning subcommittee was adamant that in partnership with the community, be at the forefront of every single thing that we do. And even though right now the mission and vision are still words that people are hearing, it is guiding what we're doing. It is guiding some of the best of what we're doing, and that partnership is occurring. And here we highlight ultimately 8 things that have happened just in the past year that reflect that partnership of being one with the town, that these are the town's resources, however they can best be utilized, however, and I would like to highlight, however we can best help. So on item 7, one of the most recent examples, and a credit once again to Ms. Proctor, is the adoption of the ClearGov platform by the school department. Ultimately, the ClearGov platform is what we need, or what the town relies on, in order to do our capital improvement plan. And in years past, we just have sent them a spreadsheet. We've sent them things and they've input it. Well, we're adding steps to that process. Mrs. Proctor said, we can do that directly. The schools can adopt the ClearGov or give us access, and we'll do it. It doesn't make, if I'm inputting it on a spreadsheet, we can save steps. And again, we can save steps, work in coordination with one another. And if it makes your life easier at the town level by us adopting this simple step and this simple platform, and it's going to make things clear, transparent to everyone, then why don't we do it? And so again, that's the type of partnership that we are committed to building, not only in our schools, but with the town as well, and want to continue throughout this budget process. Next slide, please. So under our major considerations that we know of thus far for this school year, under the unfunded mandates, Last year, we highlighted in the presentations, and I don't expect people to remember this, but there are about 154 unfunded or underfunded state and federal mandates. We are looking at one of those potentially getting onto the books. So this has been pushed off for the past 2 years. It is a current law for high quality curricular materials, and it has been in effect for ELA materials as well as for mathematics. Science has been pushed down the road for a couple years, and from what we're hearing, it is not going to be pushed off any longer. And the reason why I would highlight this is that they're not textbooks. They're for the most part, and they have to be K through 12 resources, but especially at the elementary level, they're consumables. So whatever it is that we need to put down, it's not oh, well, we have the book, it'll last us a few years. It's going to be, we bought it, and it's going to be replenished because they're going to be used up. So it's going to be a reoccurring cost that is not insignificant, and that is going to need to be reoccurring. We also have our contract expirations that are going on. I've highlighted them in previous meetings here, so I won't go through. I would just highlight that our education support professionals are our second largest bargaining unit. So the potential for impact is significant. The federal funding uncertainty, and then what I would hope one day we will put as number one on our major considerations for fiscal years, and that will be our strategic plan and priorities. Eventually, but at least it's on the list this year. So, next slide, please. So in this slide, it is an attempt, or just to let the town council know of our 4 core priorities, of which we also have embedded our core beliefs about teaching and learning, and that ultimately what we're looking for in our budget submissions is that we can expect to see some initiatives aligned to these priorities coming from building and district administrators in FY27. Next slide, please. And so now we get into some of the data points that are historically discussed. We've discussed them as a committee recently. So I won't belabor the point, but ultimately our current enrollment from pre-K through 12 currently is 2,175, and we have 11. In addition, we have 11 students that I say we have an obligation to, because we're taking their tuition money in order to take part in those CTEs. So that is up from 6 last year. So we have a total of 11 coming in, but we also have an obligation for our students who are out of district in various capacities, those in special ed placements. Those special ed placements are out placements where ultimately we are paying tuition for them to go to a different school because of their needs outlined in their individual education plan. Special ed services are those students with IEPs who attend private schools, but yet we still need to send folks to those schools in order to give them their services. So they're privately enrolled students by choice. However, their IEP requires that we provide those services. We have 92, currently we have 92 CTE tuition students. That's down 1 from last year. 136 charter enrollments, which is up, and a bit. And we have a total, or excuse me, a state out of district of 14 that is also up from last year. So if there are no questions, the next slide is about projected enrollment.
I have a couple of questions, if
Okay.
you don't mind, Mr. Pedraza.
Please.
The 25 students that attend private schools that get their special education services from our employees. Are those private schools locally, like in the town? Okay. All right. And at some point, I would like to be, whether it's tonight or an email, I would like to be refreshed on the state schools, because I know that that's different from the way the charter schools and the
Yep.
outplaced CTE people go.
Yep, so that would be Davies, Rhode Island School for the Deaf, and the Met.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Next slide. So projection, enrollment projections. This is actually, I believe it may have been our last meeting or maybe the meeting prior, where I took the committee through this year's NESDEC enrollments and that comparison. And ultimately, again, this is that comparison again for the town council, as well as the general public who is there, as well as to start highlighting that again, even NESDEC comes out and in the report says years 1 to 3 are reliable, but as you get further and further away, they become less reliable. There's a lot more that can change that is yet to be predicted, especially in terms of birth rates, increase in housing, et cetera, et cetera. However, I do want to make a point here that by going off of NESDEC projections, that there's a danger to that, because even in year-to-year projections, they can be wrong, and significantly, which we saw last year, and which we will need to on our enrollment trends that I would urge us to look closer at some of the trends that are happening that I'll talk about in other slides, which is, although enrollment is declining, it is now doing so at a lesser rate. Additionally, as I talked about with CTE students, well, actually, I've shown you this slide in previous presentations, but next slide, I'll get into some of these. I put this slide in here to make sure, or just to show that 41 students, which is ultimately our projected enrollment is from last year's NESDEC, and then our actual this year is this year's NESDEC, as well as our enrollment report. And again, it has a difference of 41 students. And it seems to come up during budget time. Oh, 41 students. Well, is that a classroom? Is that a classroom and a half? No, it's spread out. It depends. And ultimately, our 41 students are spread out throughout the district in terms of where those numbers are or aren't coming in terms of where those differences are. And so it has multiple impacts across multiple schools and multiple grade levels. Yes.
Put on my time. Yeah, just had a question on the NESDEC numbers that you're listing here. Now, obviously, these are different than what we currently have enrolled in the district, right? So
You mean back one slide or this slide?
the back one slide.
Okay.
So you're looking at 21-27 projected for this current school year.
Yep.
Correct?
So currently the NESDEC projected the 2086 and the 21-27 is where we landed.
But and then it looks like we're actually at 21-75 for this school year, right? Based on the slide a couple before, or just the ones before that one.
Oh, that's because that current enrollment, that was as of December 1st.
So I was just making a point, the actual enrollment is still higher than what NESDEC was projecting for this year, even with the revised numbers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And that number, just to clarify, does mean.
You know why? Because the previous numbers include pre-K. The next slide does not include pre-K.
Okay, so 21-27 does not include pre-K. Is that?
So, and maybe this is something that will need to change. So on the previous slide of the plus 41 with the 5 school year projection, that is K through 12. The very first one that started the total enrollment conversation, that does include pre-K.
Okay, okay.
that
so
is-
21
And it
seventy-five.
also includes the other kids we're responsible for. They're not sitting in our seats.
Correct.
Well, I'm talking about the 2175, it's the top number. That doesn't
Oh.
include those folks. And that was gonna be my next question on the NESDEC enrollment numbers. Are they looking at projected students in our schools or all students that we're responsible for?
Projected students in our schools.
Okay, so obviously there's going to be a difference there where a number of students are going to choose to go elsewhere, no matter what.
Yeah.
And it's probably never going to be zero, but it is going to be a number, but that's not included in what the NESDEC.
Correct.
Numbers.
And I speak to that, and maybe it if we need to, if things are clouding the issue and if it's too much, we can remove them or move around slides. But that is addressed in the next two in-district and out-of-district enrollment
Okay, thank you.
slides. So next slide, please.
Mr.
okay.
Pedraza,
Yep.
I just want to ask about the previous slide with the 3 stripes. The orange, yeah, that one. So, I mean, the teacher in me is curious about this, and no, I'm not gonna turn it into a math lesson. You're picking on me down here. So I can, in my opinion, I can see like the increase in 9th graders because, I mean, Pollyanna in me says, you know, they're all hearing about the new high school and so forth and so on. But do we have any thoughts on the larger numbers in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade? Like any rationale behind that? Not that I'm complaining about those little darlings, but
Yeah, actually, I would say that well, number one, I would say the education that students are receiving, as well as the consistent leadership that we talked about at the elementary level. Additionally, the class sizes in those grade levels were appropriate or were not at maximum in years past. I would venture to guess, and if we think, or if we take a look actually at grade 1, our actual, that number last year, I believe both K and 1 were at contractual caps at West Kingston last year, and we had some robust discussion about that. And even this summer, when we added in a grade 2 in order to make room at West Kingston to add a section. So I would like to think that, again, that we are accommodating and that we have, the learning environment and the support of faculty, staff that we have available to students encourages that enrollment. Whereas when we are up against it and pushing class sizes and they're having different experiences and may have chosen to exit. Additionally, I think that in terms of new housing, again, we can never take away that piece, but purely conjecture, but we're doing something right at the elementary levels. Absolutely. Thank you.
Just as a refresher, UN is,
Okay, so the UN is, it might be for students who are in transition programs. So Rhode Island Law, students with IEPs who are not ready to graduate or transition are in the transition program. They are not, we could count them as seniors, but it would be year after year. So they're in the transition program, as well as the unknown. So it's an N number that NESDEC puts in there into their calculations for some of those students that they are either unaware of or are in transition programs. So ultimately, they're unaccounted for in traditional grade-based roles. Well, thank you. Okay, next slide. So sticking now so we went from total enrollment and total responsibility to our in-district enrollment trends. And this one I am going to, or at least for right now, we do go back and do a historical model because we've been talking about enrollment decline, justifiably so, enrollment decline. And how are we going to prepare for that? And I'd like to highlight here that our October 1, or in these calculations of when we created this spreadsheet and went through, is that with this total enrollment, we have the smallest decrease in student enrollment. Additionally, if you think about it, we would have should be subtracting, if NESDEC were correct, another 40 students. So that would have doubled. And so we would have been somewhere in between 2021 school year, even 2023. But we've cut that in half leading into next school year. And in consideration of that, I would just like to put out that's with increased charter numbers as well as with increased state school numbers. So again, while we've gotten the tuition in, we still have students who are going to charters that we are responsible for. So that enrollment number is clicking up, but in spite of that, we are still managing to reduce our enrollment decline at a what I would say is a fairly significant rate. Again, 3.8 was projected this last year by NESDEC. When we were in budget season last year and taking a look at staffing needs and equipment needs and what can we cut, we were planning on 41 less students. The NESDEC, and to Mr. Restivo's point earlier, is this is a flaw with NESDEC in that it's students who are already here in projections. What they do not account for is they do not account for charter school enrollments or surrounding school enrollments. Those are things that we need to put in there. And so I would put for people's consideration is that because we have 2 charter schools in the district, that we have a general or a potential spike that if we just relied on NESDEC or who's in seats right now, we generally will see a bump in 6th grade. That's because Kingston Hill Academy, of which we currently are paying for 12 students in grade 5, they can't continue at Kingston Hill and oftentimes will come to Broad Rock. And so that's a number in 6th grade enrollment that always needs to be accounted for and will vary year to year depending on how many students are in grade 5 at Kingston Hill. In the same manner, that also happens again in grade 9. So the Compass School is a K through 8 school. And so in grade 8, those students do not have another charter in district to go to or to progress to. And so often we'll be coming into, or that we need to account for, what are they going to do in 9th grade. Again, they're not in the current enrollment and or calculated in the current cohort that we're following along the NESDEC year-to-year plot. So there's just two impacts that we need to consider when talking about future enrollment. And then I would also say that, again, none of these account for a new South Kingstown High School that is currently under construction. And I feel good about bringing this up now because I would highlight that this time last year, we were paying for 28 9th graders to go to a school other than South Kingstown High School. And this year we are paying for 19 to attend. So the 9th grade, again, we know that where students start is often where they will finish, although they can move around and come back and change their minds. Again, we're seeing that, again, that declining enrollment in our CTE out of district tuitions with students who are currently with us. And so that's a trend, even with a school that is literally just a foundation at this point, one could state is already having an impact and should only get stronger as actually students who will spend time and walk the halls of that building it becomes more real and real. So again, this year's freshman class, will have a year or two every year. The students will be closer and closer to a new South Kingstown High School. And that is not reflected. That impact is not reflected in NESDEC projections.
I just had I'm sorry to be nitpicky about the numbers because
No.
I just want to make sure, if I'm confused, I'm sure town council could be confused, general public could be confused. So I just want to try to make sure I'm looking at everything the way you intend it to be looked at. So in this in-district enrollment trend slide, you're looking at NESDEC projected 26-27 of a total of 2137, which I understand potentially includes that 59 in pre-K, which NESDEC does not.
Yes,
Correct?
correct.
Okay, but I do still see a discrepancy between the number on this slide and the number 2 slides back, 2087. If I add 2087 and 59, I get 2146, a difference of 9 students. So I'm just curious where that discrepancy might be coming from, or maybe I'm not seeing something I should be seeing.
So I'll go back and I'll make sure that they all align, because I was unfortunately between taking past presentations, which were based off of October 1, which then informed NESDEC, sometimes using pre-K, sometimes using K through 12, sometimes including transition, other times I'll make sure,
Okay.
or we'll all make sure that that those are in alignment.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
No,
I like
absolutely.
having
Thank you.
one like common number that we can all look at and really understand. It's like, okay, here's where the trends are actually happening.
Yep.
Here's what we're seeing. And now you say the UN, I'm seeing now, well, maybe that 9 student differential could include those transition students that are, are there but not included in this number.
Correct.
So, but that's an important distinction. I think we need to
Yep.
make sure was known when looking at this.
Absolutely. Totally agreement.
Mr. Pedroza, can I keep going on these numbers? I'm sorry, because I'm reading this, I think, differently than Mr. Estivo is, so I'm looking at the slide with the enrollment projections that says for 25-26 is additional 41.
Yep.
Okay, so the first column of numbers is, the way I read it was that's what NESDEC projected in 24-25
Correct.
for 25-26.
Correct.
Okay, and then what NESDEC projected in 25-26 for 25-26.
Correct.
Okay, but when we look at this slide
Yeah,
that you
and-
have
and-
up there.
Yeah, and the one you
now,
were referencing is K through 12.
This slide is okay. I wrote that down already. But on this slide that you have up there now, the way I read it, and tell me if I'm wrong, the numbers up to the next to the last column that's labeled 25-26 are actual what we have sitting in our seats. And so 2177 is the number that this says we have sitting in our seats. And I haven't.
Yes, and I just, what I need to do is I need to make sure that I go back and make sure where I've got, be consistent with where I'm getting the data from. Am I using October 1? Am I using the NESDEC projections? Am I using the December 1st? And so
Okay.
I think what's happened is I've mismatched.
You've missed.
I've taken what we've done from enrollment at different time periods and tried to use them without thinking, oh, that didn't account for, between October 1, just as of right now, like if I had included homeschool on this, it wouldn't be reflective of the action that you took tonight, which would have increased that number. And so I'll need to make sure that I'm pulling data from the same spot, or make sure that we're clear on where that data is coming from. If it's October 1, if it's to date.
Okay, and I mean, whether the number needs adjusting or not, that last column on that slide that's up there now
Yes,
is what NASDAQ says we're gonna have next year.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, yes.
Right, but and it can be confusing. It's what they say is going to be, but it includes pre-K, where the previous enrollment projection is K through 12. It's
This
leaving them off. So,
Okay.
so
This
that's,
does not,
All right, 59, Albert.
you don't get, no, you don't get 2087. So,
So it's.
that's what 550,
Yeah.
if I'm doing my mental math correctly.
Right, so I think, yes, exactly. So I think that's what we're saying. that
Yep.
these Numbers are coming from different places.
Yeah, and so it's
this
create, yes. And, we can't have that.
nope.
Yeah, I just like tying the through line to like, no,
Yeah.
okay, it's this number, this, apples to apples.
Yes.
And that's gonna make it
Yeah.
clear for town council, it's gonna make it clear for the general public and obviously make it a little clearer for us.
So in terms of, should we, so if I'm referencing NASDAQ numbers, I'll go with the NASDAQ report rather than, hey, as of the most recent numbers to date, as of December 1st, or our October enroll, which again, our NASDAQ is, we gave those numbers a few days after our October 1, once they were validated, we then gave those to NASDAQ. So if the committee is comfortable with that, I'll stick with the NASDAQ numbers. And then if we needed okay, what is the enrollment at the high school as of today? We'll have those at the ready. Unless,
Well, I'm gonna muck up the waters.
okay,
Because, so in going through this exercise, I understand the need for wanting to explain how NASDAQ projections are flawed. And I think that's super important. But I think what we should be basing all of our trend lines are what our actuals are. So so unless RIDE is utilizing the NASDAQ projections to determine our state aid, which I don't believe they are, they're using our actuals. So what I might recommend, and it wasn't dawning on me until this conversation, and I'm trying to like sort out that it might make more sense to, yes, we want to demonstrate that making decisions based on NASDAQ projections is not the best way to budget. And this is why. And so what we're doing is we're making our decisions based on our own, in reality for South Kingstown in these years. These are our trends. This is what we are projecting based on what we're looking at. And that's what we're making our decisions based on. Instead of having these, so the previous slide, and you don't have to go back to it. Where we're projecting out, a scenario based on NASDAQ projections with that final number of like 24, whatever. Those aren't real. Those are not real numbers because they're just NASDAQ projections. So I would suggest we stick with our actuals. That makes sense. If other folks are in agreement or not, that's clearly, it's a group.
I think though that the verified actual numbers as of October 1st would be the most consistent. But yes, the actuals as of which are what's in this year's NASDAQ numbers. That way we can use the NASDAQ reports again, going forward, that we know they're going to be flawed. But if we can stick to that number, we won't have to explain, well, this slide, it's this number, and this slide, it's that number, because, even us here that we know there's like 4 different ways to pull an enrollment report, depending on which one you want. It's really hard to explain. So I think the more consistent, the better, but I absolutely agree when we have to be aware that the actuals that we are looking at in the forward are going to be different than the NASDAQ.
And to solidify that thought process, that's what RIDE uses. And so that's what we should be using. And there's always been in South Kingstown this conversation about enrollment numbers and micromanaging it literally from week to week. And that is not reality, right? Our reality is our numbers change week to week to week, but that's not what we should be budgeting to. we need to have room for that movement, and we need to keep those in mind, of course, but when we're coming in and we're budgeting, we should be, like you said, Carol, the October 1.
I do like this slide. We just need to tie them up and be consistent of using, are we going to use pre-K to 12 or K to 12? But I just want to look at the one thing that's left on this slide, that's a NASDAQ projection, and that's that we would stay at -40 for the one we're budgeting 26-27 school year. And I think when we start the budget process, we really have to look at that number, because I don't think it's going to be 40. I think that the high school is going to cause our enrollments to really stabilize more than those projected numbers. So just to put it out there for more consideration when we really get into the process.
I would agree with that in terms of definitely you looking at the actuals. I also remember a slide you were using where we were showing the rollover from key grades like 5 to 6 and then 8 into 9 to show the trends, how those were moving in a positive direction, can also show a positive impact. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what I'm noticing, I think we're probably spending a little too much time trying to explain why NESDEC's wrong. Yeah, I think that's the core, the heart of the issue. I don't think we need to spend that much time. Yeah.
Right.
We just need to say
Yeah,
like
I'm
these are just
confusing.
guesses.
Yeah.
They're wrong. Let's use what we actually have and then
Yeah.
base it on that.
Okay. Right. So I would say that ultimately the one with the projected to actual and then the difference, although it shows across that those, but am I hearing if we were to lose a slide, we're beating a dead horse that I can remove, so I'll align the numbers as well as we've maybe made our point, or I've made the point enough on the enrollment projections rather than showing the projection in actuality this year and what it.
I agree with that. I think showing how they revise the numbers up and just generally, getting the point across that this is not like the Kate's point, this is not something we should be basing our budget on. We should be basing on what is actually happening, because we could see that change. It could trend up. We don't know. I mean, obviously they still have us going down, but that may not be our reality when we were talking about this next year.
I would make that one slide, just take the letters NASDAQ, put it in the middle of a red circle with a line through it, and that'll explain it.
Okay, there's our first budget cut. Sorry, NASDAQ. Okay. Okay. So that one here. So we'll lose this slide. And I'll make sure that we have alignment, use actual as much as possible, and then make sure that we're consistent, whether it be pre-K through 12 or K through 12, and get that alignment. Thank you. Of course, I say that, then we're going to stick with enrollment trends. Next slide, please. But we're going to go to out of district enrollment trends. And here you see the trend line again for charter schools continuing to go up. Career and tech starting at 70 in the 1920 school year and going down in terms of this school year. In terms of the state school, in terms of the state school going up, again, that's because, again, we have a satellite campus that has been opened here in town, but that ultimately our total. Each student, we get to make some adjustments for charter schools by reducing, I believe it's by 7% here or there. But if we look at every student and talk about around $20,000 for this academic year, again, the current those projected school costs there are using last year's numbers. And so those have only gone up in terms of cost per pupil costs. So each student leaving is about $20,000, budgetarily speaking. I would also like to highlight here that we can't ignore this issue and compare, as we look to compare, as some people will, South Kingstown to other districts and say, but they, we are the only town in Washington County, Kent County, Newport County, and Bristol County that has more than one charter school located in the town. That includes Warwick, which is considered the urban areas, which is also, in terms of underperforming schools, where charter schools were normally established. So to have one charter school in a district is difficult. We have two, and once again, we have a new satellite campus from a state school. So I would argue we actually have three. But that's a whole other,
Mr. Pedraza, do
yes.
any of those counties have no charter schools within their,
Well, what, in terms of Washington County, so we've got, Greene. In Kent County, I'd have to go, I don't believe so.
okay, I thought Bristol County didn't have any.
Actually, now that well, Highlander technically is located in Bristol County. However, it's a statewide that's bussed in generally from Providence.
And
In Warren.
my other question, and you're probably gonna tell me, no, you can't do this, but we can all dream. Is there any way, like, to indicate publicly that, we've got isn't our high school 4 stars?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. We've got a 4-star high school here,
we do.
and people are sending their kids to 1 and 2-star schools. Can we say that? Never mind. I know we can't say it. All right.
Yep.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, thank you.
But we can always say that we have a 4-star high school. So we can put that out there.
We can say that and leave off the. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So,
Is the point, sorry,
sorry, no.
is the point you're making in terms of the charter schools, the number that we have that are in charter schools relative to these other counties because of the, well, that's my other, I understand we have two, they have one. Are the numbers of people, of students in those charter schools a relative number to what we have?
I haven't done a comparison of enrollment numbers because they also serve surrounding communities, generally speaking. Again, Rhode Island being somewhat of a provincial nature, people tend to stay close. So what I would say is that in all of the counties, nobody has especially in a suburban district, no one has the opportunity for school choice. That we are an outlier in suburban communities, with the exception of Cumberland, in terms of the ability to, within our town's borders, lose students to charter schools.
I would recommend not going down that rabbit hole
Okay.
with the town council. I think what you have here is powerful. We have two, basically 3 charter schools in our town. That is 2 to 3 more than other communities have. If we get into, we have there are kids in the charter schools in South Kingston that come from Providence, they come from Newport, They come from Smithfield, they come from wherever the parent decides to drive from, if their kids get selected. So I don't think going down a rabbit hole like that is, it might be good to know, but I think as far as we're presenting in the town council, like those, it just, to me, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the point you're making on the screen right here. I think, is that we're the only town in the state that is faced with 2 to 3, basically 3. So, to me, it's saying more than one. We have 3. So that's that is to me is the big number. And most people will stay within their circumference that they're comfortable with. Yes, some will travel near and far, but as most Rhode Islanders know, that's not the norm.
Okay, so next slide, please. So now we get into staffing. Ultimately, our year-to-year decrease of 3.9% in staff is our actual in terms of a year-to-year decrease, where we had a 1.8% decrease in district enrollment. So ultimately, we based off of last year and the financial constraints we were put under, we decreased staff at a greater rate than we did students, which is something that, again, is not something that I'm putting it out there for people's information, as well as going also back to that NESDEC piece, that if we over project, again, the only place that we have right now is fund balance, people, and programs. I'd also, in terms of the positions that are listed here, I would talk about, to make sure, because I believe last year there was some confusion around who fall or what positions fall into what buckets, and I believe so. I'm prepared here to talk about who's included in district-wide admin, who or what positions are included in district-wide support, et cetera, to make sure that when we talk about district-wide support, that we might have somebody in that position who holds a professional or holds a teaching certification or an administrative certification. And the opposite can be true in some instances as well. So I'm prepared to just talk about what positions fall into each bucket, so that because I believe we were talking or there was vigorous conversation about what constituted administration and administrative support. And so I will put that on the record in terms of what positions make up those numbers. Next slide, please. And at this time, I'm going to, so it is on this slide that if you are using a previous version of this slide deck, that the state aid is going to be incorrect. What's being projected on the screen for the state aid as well as the total is correct. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Proctor.
Okay, we're going to talk about revenues fiscal year 26 current year. Our town appropriation is the same as last year, 55,994,773. The next line, state aid, which is the high cost special ed that we received from RIDE, is 5,757,809. The state and federal grants, 3,870,230. Miscellaneous revenue, which is a combination of tuition and Medicaid, local grants, private donations, refunds, reimbursements, and RIDE 2% ERSRI contribution back to employer, is 767,454. School lunch revenues and state aid, which is a combination of what pupils pay for school lunches, state aid, are the claims that we get for the free and reduced breakfast and lunches. That is 710,000. And your use of the fund balance, that is 1,155,000. Now, that use of the fund balance is what we projected and what has been sent to RIDE that says we are going to spend this year on capital improvements. Total revenues for fiscal 26, 68,255,266. Fiscal year 25, these are unaudited numbers. The audit is not complete yet. As I had mentioned previous, the audit will be completed by December 31st per state ruling. Town appropriation last year was 55,994,773. State aid, 5,867,847. State and federal grants, 2,864,249. Last year was the last year for the ESSA and the ARPA, 994,196. Miscellaneous revenue is 434,982. School lunch revenue and state aid is 761,315. And the use of fund balance, 1,590,847. That's where the fund balance comes into play for us using this year. Total for last year, unaudited, 68,508,209. That's our revenue sides for fiscal 26 and for fiscal 25. Okay. Expenditures, next slide, please. Thank you. Fiscal 26, current year, this is what was budgeted. The salaries at 31,199,411. Benefits, 14,402,658. That includes health, prescriptions, so on. Professional, technical, other purchase services, which would include transportation, food services, professional services, tuitions, licenses, 18 million. Supplies and materials, these are for items that are not covered by the school budgets, are 2 million. The property / CapEx, those are the capital expenditures. And the property would be the maintenance, the facilities and maintenance that goes on during the year for our schools. 1,945,000, and miscellaneous other is 205,000 for a total of 67,752,069. Last year, fiscal 25, unaudited actuals, salaries of 31,394,944. Benefits 14,005,437. Professional, technical, other purchase services 17,081,045. Supplies and materials 1,730,340. Property and capital expenditures 935,622, and miscellaneous other 213,600 for a total of 65,360,988 unaudited.
So I can understand the differences between the actual budgeted and actual expense, revenue and expenses for last year. I can understand that that we would end with the fund balance. And this is not the fund balance because these are not audited numbers. I want to make
Okay.
sure, but that's not my question. My question is, when we budget for this year revenue expenditures, my assumption is they would be equal, and they're not. So why is the expenditures less for budgeted numbers than the revenue?
Why are the expenditures less than the revenue?
Yes, because we have a balanced budget that we passed, so we're
Well, you didn't have that for last year either. Because there was a difference, your expenses were less than your income. What happens is that when you turn around and you look at all the items that are in your expenses, then if you were equal, then you wouldn't have anything. What you have is also the 1,590,847 that was put away into capital expenditures that was not spent, that is going to
Okay.
be spent this year.
So we had it a budgeted amount out of the revenue going into
Going
fund
into fund
balance?
balance.
Okay.
That was not spent. That is going to be spent this year because we had to go through the exercise of getting rides approval again because we didn't spend it last year. We missed the window.
Right. And I do understand last year's number, why there's differences, and there always will be in actuals to budget or revenue, actual revenues and actual expenses.
Yes.
But you answered my question, because the difference was a budgeted amount out of revenue to fund balance. That's why the revenues are higher than the expenses. That I just want, because we will probably get that question. So great. Thanks.
Yes. But it will be spent this year so that we are back into agreement with rides approval of our allotted expenses, capital improvements, I should say, excuse me.
Yeah, I think your explanation was great. I just think we need to be ready because they will probably ask that. Although no one really knows what they're going to ask, so be ready for anything.
I have a curiosity question. I feel like I'm going to sound dumb when I ask it, so I'm questioning myself as to why I want to ask it. But why I usually keep my dumb comments for my house. I usually try not to come out with public with my dumbness. I am just curious why we aren't going in with the current year budgeted. Why are we going into last year's why aren't we just coming in with current year budget and then projected the projected budget? Yeah.
So microphone challenge. Well, we can't do projected yet. It's too early for what we want to do for next year. So are you just saying one slide revenue expenses for 1 year?
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious why we're bringing 25 into it, because we're currently navigating 26, and that's where when we finally do settle on what we're projecting for 27.
I think it goes to what they've called the meeting. It's to share what happened last. Isn't that what it is, Michael?
I'm trying to, I would have to call up what our next, let me look into what it's officially called in terms of what we've have done on a posted agenda. But it's to kick off where we do a compare it, or we do this year's, the status to date of this year's budget. We don't
That
have,
part I understand why we're doing this year's, which is fiscal year 26, current year budgeted. I'm just curious why we're bringing fiscal year 25 last year into.
I agree, because they're not audited numbers, and I don't think we should put them out there because they're going to change, and then people are, but you told us so. So I do agree with you. If we don't need to show it, I think it would be just confusing to people.
which is, would we,
This is a best practice thing, then I will totally take that. But it just is a matter of curiosity, because we're reviewing what we're doing for this year, fiscal year 26, and then we'll be over the next few months projecting for 27, right? So I guess it's just a matter of why are we bringing those numbers into the conversation, only because they're going to get henpecked, but they kind of don't mean anything. They're over and done with.
so if the committee's pleasure is that we can do revenue, we could condense revenue and expenditures for FY 26, and then leave those longitudinal comparisons if necessary for future budget conversations. Ultimately, again, we kept the same format, but at the same time, there was also, we wanted to, it's on there because we had previously had extended windows of each year to year to year. And so rather than going wholesale into just this school year, it was rather than going once again back into times where federal aid cup overrunneth and where we hopefully, now that we have that stability, that we begin to focus in on the year to change this year, but with some semblance of, hey, in years past, we have done a comparison. So this was that attempt to keep up with that, or to just to stay.
And in the past, they've jumped on that number as fun as, oh, you have this surplus. They're not audited yet. We've seen this happen. I agree with Kate, just because we did it in the past, it has kind of hurt us in some instances. So if we can just show the 1 year 2026 budget, I think it's better.
So it
I
wasn't dumb
agree.
after all. It wasn't dumb after all.
Was thinking from a CFO point of view, which clearly I was wrong, because I forgot about what Ms. Massaninti and Ms. Veta brought up. I thought we had to present it because it was not yet audited. But as Ms. Veta said, they're gonna see this extra that we want to use for capital projects. And they're gonna jump on it.
On the extra, so just to be clear, in terms of why we are, in terms of that extra, we still don't know, we still are unaudited, which I know we've said, but we also need to use the fund balance in addition, more than it was anticipated because of the West Kingston parking lot. And we did not, because of the delay, the West Kingston parking lot, I'll refresh some memories, was expected to be complete before the end of fiscal year 25. It was not. As such, that was a project that was $300,000 to $400,000. Had it been completed, it would have been included in our required by law 3% maintenance of effort. Because it was not, we did not meet our maintenance of effort, and as such, the state is currently withholding housing aid and holding it in a special fund until we meet our 3% plus. So it's about 3.3. So until we hit our or show that we are on track to hit our 3.3%, so go above and beyond our maintenance of effort, they will not release those funds in order to. So basically what was supposed to be spent in FY25 is now being forced, or appropriately so, because the project was not completed until FY26. So we need to use even more in fund balance.
Thank you for the explanation.
So
Can I also I just pulled up the agenda for Thursday.
Mhm.
And it is specific to 20, I don't have my glasses on, but I'm pretty sure that's what it says. It says the development of the fiscal year 2026-27 municipal school budgets to include, but not limited to, school enrollment, staffing, revenue, expenditures, and budget drivers. So it is specific to, we don't have to.
Okay, so we will combine revenue and expenditures to show just FY26. Okay. Okay, next slide, please. And so ultimately, this is our closing slide, in which, again, we want to continue to build off of the momentum from last fiscal year and those conversations that were productive, open, and honest. We want to continue that as we craft fiscal year 27. We also want to make sure that, again, that we are aligned to the district's new mission, vision, and developing strategic plan. We want to also be cognizant of actions and prioritize actions that are not only going to give each and every student that is with us the best educational opportunity, but also wherever possible, bring new students in or have students return to us, as well as then using the most relevant and recent data to inform our decisions and process. And next slide. And we would take questions. Any other questions, comments, concerns, suggestions? Open to any and all.
I'm stuck on slide staffing.
Staffing.
We go back quite a ways, right, on that.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if that, like, what point are we looking to drive home on this? What's the takeaway here? That's what if we're gonna go back that far, something should be said as to what's going on, whether we tie it to level funding as some of the reasons for reduced staff, or however it is that we look at it, either chop off a couple of
Yep.
years or have some sort of takeaway on this that drives home the point.
Okay. I mean, similarly, we can go to our current, we can highlight our FY 25, or excuse me, FY 26, our current year staffing.
I think my biggest takeaway was not from the slide, but in what you said to combine information from slides. And I don't know if, I think it's fine just to do it verbally like you did. But the biggest thing is our enrollment declined 1.8%, but our staffing declined even more.
Yes.
So maybe a line that shows the percentage of staffing that's decreased over the years. And I do agree, you might not need 19 and 20, but maybe the percentage of the decline in our staffing, because I think that was my big takeaway is I could see it on one side, a decline of 1.8. So maybe seeing that, and I don't know what it is here. James can figure it out. He's the number wizard. Yeah, percentage changed from 24, 25 to 25, 26. 3.9.
3.9.
Okay. Yeah, so that might help because that's a huge thing. Our enrollment went down 1.8, but our staffing went down 3.9. So I think that's a good thing. What is the point we want to make? And I think that would be a really good point.
So wherever possible, or as appropriate, take these numbers and make sure that we're dealing with the most recent numbers, and when we're not, make sure to reference those numbers to a point. Okay. Will do.
My only concern is we will have those community members who continue to think we're overstaffed, and some town council members, and a lot of it, in my personal opinion, as an educator, is that they don't really understand what goes on in our schools today as opposed to what went on in our schools in the 60s and 70s.
Agreed.
The only thing that I would kind of say to that is it's our business meeting and it is a public meeting. It's our business meeting being held in public. And yep, there's going to be community members and they're going to come every time and they're going to say their point. And it doesn't matter what we put on the screen. You can look at from 19 all the way up to 26, and we can demonstrate. And clearly 2021 was an outlier because a lot of those were 1-year placements. It was year we're trying to recover from COVID. There was a lot going on there. So it does tell a story, but it tells a story to folks who are open to listening to the story. the folks who are going to say, because they're going to, no matter how many numbers are listed under district-wide admin and school-based admin,
It's too
they're
bad.
going to tell us that we're top heavy.
It's too bad.
It could be 4 and 3, and they're going to tell us we're top heavy. So to me, this is what we're working on, and maybe keep like 24, 25 and 25, 26, just so that we can prove, or however you want to do it. Cause I liked what you said about it being, the trend of, compared to the enrollment loss. I think we start worrying less about the onesie, twosie community members who are going to say what they say every single time, year over year over year. And we start worrying about doing what we know is right by our faculty, staff, and students.
Will do.
My last point, I love to quote my husband, just because we can show something doesn't mean we should show something. And again, like Stuart said, like this was very powerful when we were demonstrating like the argument of being level funded year over year. That's our reality. So it's not really our argument anymore. It's just, this is where we are. And this is where we need to be if we want to give our schools, our children, the quality education they deserve. So this is what we need. And then the town will do what they will with it.
I do think this is important because we're setting the stage of what we're going to be asking for. And I feel like 3.9% in 1 year was huge, and we can't do it again. And that's what they need to understand. You're absolutely right. No matter what we do, people are going to come to the podium and say, you still can get rid of more people. But we can't, because we got rid of so many people last year, and we can't do it again. So it is a big part, because like Michael said, I mean, the biggest part of the budget is people. And if you, in the rest is programs. So, eh, eh, so we need to prove to them that we are appropriately staffed and that we cannot make further cuts. And, naysayers are always going to be there. 100%. I agree with you. So, but I do think this is an important slide, in that when we come back going, no, remember we told you we need all these people.
So what we can do, and I'll use this as an opportunity. So I can put those down, our current staffing, talk about the decline in each one for the total, put that as a percentage, compare it to enrollment, as well as highlight that even cutting 15 positions, we didn't come close to, we couldn't get to the number of level funding, which I believe level funding last year was required approximate or attempted cuts of about $2.3 million. We cut 15 and still didn't get there. Are still using fund balance, have a one-time targeted appropriation this fiscal year. We couldn't do it last year. There's no way now, with slower decline in enrollment, that we are once again going, can make that happen based on the back of our staff. Do. Thank you.
That will bring us to discussion action 6B, 5-year capital improvement program. Before I turn it over to Mr. Projaza, I just want to say we are preparing in this one meeting for 2 meetings. So we just did the presentation for Thursday's meeting, and then on is it January 6th, Terry? January 6th, we have a second meeting on the CIP. So the next presentation, so we don't have to meet again. We're going to just have a longer meeting tonight. So yes, I'm not keeping it to short this time, Stuart, but but we don't have to meet again.
A lot less
So,
slides.
Yeah, so
anytime
we're
we can-
doing 2 presentations in 1 meeting, but they're each one to prepare for a separate town council joint meeting.
I've always said A 2-for-1 is better than a 1-for-2.
So
Ms. Vetta, is that meeting or Ms. Marcia Salt, is that meeting on the 6th of January, is that at 7 PM or is that at 6:30? Thank you.
So similarly, to the last presentation, it is the same information, same agenda, as last year, but in a different format. I will try and cue, committee members in and jog your memory in terms of a presentation done by Mr. Ferrucci before he left, that talked about our capital improvement plan, where we went into lots of detail and lots of efforts, making sure that every reimbursable project, whether we get to it or not, is included in our capital expenditure plan and listed that way so that we can prioritize in partnership with the town those projects that are reimbursable at the state rate. And this, so next slide, please. So our draft agenda, bottom line up front, the funding sources, technology, facilities, and then questions. Wonderful outline of our being constructed school. Next slide, please. So our bottom line up front is, once again, we're not currently requesting any additional funds in this submission. The amount of work that needs to get done, this community is well aware of. It went out to bond. We know that there is a high school, but that we also have lots of other projects that need to get done around the district. Ultimately, that is based off the facilities master plan, which was done in 2022, facilities condition assessment. But what's different in this year's iteration of our submission to the capital improvement plan is that we're making sure that we're looking to prioritize that reimbursement, as well as we did get a facilities condition assessment feedback from RIDE that is also talks about various projects. This the second to last bullet, I think, is the most important piece, especially since we are funding capital improvements out of our fund balance, is that because of that, these projects are moving targets and subject to change based on our priorities and funding availability. We have to hit our 3%. However, making sure that that 3% is in reimbursable projects is not always possible. And again, we have that obligation for our students now, warm, safe, and dry. For example, this year, to keep, things go wrong with a boiler. We have to buy parts. We have to keep that boiler up and running during the winter. That's not in the capital improvement plan, but it is a capital expenditure. It goes towards our 3%, but because we have to do that, that leaves then less money that we have in the budget. Or it means, if we were to continue, it means taking more money out of fund balance in addition to accounting for those emergency day-to-day operations. So again, every project that is listed here is subject to change. And in this project, or in this presentation, I've listed the school's full CIP, ultimately from that meeting. It lists all of the projects. And that this body put a gavel down on September 30th. And with that, I ask for next slide and turn it over to Mrs. Proctor.
Funding sources. Our reappropriated funding source for fiscal 26 is that 1.155 million that I spoke about in the budget. The federal grants. Federal Communications Commission, FCC reimbursements for purchases in previous fiscal years, and no other insurance or expiring federal grant-based projects on the horizon.
We put those in there, one, and I believe Mr. Snow, that FCC reimbursement, that's after that. So that, that's a reimbursement that comes back after those are made. It's not a grant that they give us in order to purchase it. We have to seek reimbursement for it. And the last one, there are no other insurances. On previous years, we did have, I believe it was the generator at Peacedale was taken care of by the trust, as well as other iterations of this presentation talked about ESSER or special projects. So that's why we included those. Next slide, please. So with technology, because of while there are a lot of projects on there, there are not so many that in terms of scope and scale, they do not fit onto one. And you get a pretty good idea of the ongoing costs that are associated with technology, especially when we're talking about devices that are in front of or go to students, faculty, and staff, that those need to be refreshed, as well as technology constantly changing, servers, switches that often need to get changed, as well as some pedagogical changes that need to be contemplated, such as what's best, if any, in the primary years. Should we have iPads? Should they have touch screens? Should there be computers? As well as the different software, and that each computer or Chromebook or device is expected to run. That changes as changes in technology occur. However, all that being said, the projects that we have listed in the ClearGov platform, that this body put a gavel down, are reflected in this slide. However, next slide, please. That is not the case with facilities and maintenance, as there are a total of 61 projects listed, of which we've prioritized, or of which 56 are eligible for reimbursement. What we did in this exercise is not only do we prioritize reimbursement, but we're also getting back to the original source of warm, safe, and dry. If we don't have that, well, then it's very, very difficult to have school, never mind special programs at schools. So in terms of a year to year, for this exercise, what we did is we said, if we assume at least about a $2 million project or budget for each school year, what would, on that list of 61 items, would we want to get done? So for next year, we see that the HVAC replacement at multiple schools is prioritized, and followed by SY 26-27 roofing. The thinking, and what after talking with professionals, ultimately get the HVAC units in there. Don't go walking on a new roof or opening up a new roof for HVAC repairs. Get the HVACs in there and then put the new roof around it so that it's sealed and you're not voiding warranties by walking on them. And then in 28-29, fire alarms and continued roofing. And then in 29-30, wet pipe sprinkler electrical work, which is obviously substantial. And then last but not least, in SY 30-31, the hazard building electrical. The thinking being is that, again, we have the hazard building. We will have a brand new, lovely high school that is fully operational. We will also have a school that we are currently sitting in no longer present and will have been demolished. While we would love to have both hazard and a new high school be reflective of aesthetically appeasing or pleasing, we're not sure based on, should we be doing things on the exterior of hazard prior to demolition? And so that's why we've prioritized it that way. So it is on our, we are contemplating it. And it's not, again, it's not. So that's why we've prioritized those each way. We will have to do a comprehensive district-wide facilities plan by beginning, I believe we'll start that next school year for RIDE, to give them again a full listing so that they can once again come back with projects that are reimbursable. So again, by the end of SY 29-30, we're already into a new plan. as and this warm, safe and dry and everything that the most recent bond was built off of is getting reset.
So can we go back a slide? Please? I know it's really hard to read, but I get the years going out in 2027. Where the budget will be 298K. 417,000 the next year. Okay. My question is the two totals. Why are there two? Because obviously those are only going to add up to one total line. I mean, is the 20 fiscal year 26 line that much higher from what we're doing this year? I think that's confusing. If 2026 is higher because of 2027 doesn't include what we've already done, maybe we just don't need 26. If 27 is the aggregate of all of those years individually, I think we just need to leave that total and not show two columns there.
Of what's in ClearGov, or so that, or is this what Mr. Ferrucci was? Okay, in terms of being a ride, what was? Yeah. No, okay. Okay. I'm just curious about our ability to manipulate or to recreate. So, yep. So because we wanted to make sure that we're quoting what this committee put a gavel down on, we're trying to use that, and that is what was presented without recreating it in a.
I understand, but our goal here is to present it.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, we approved it, but that doesn't mean this has to be the way we present it.
Okay.
So I want to take away anything that's confusing, because we'll just waste time on that and not be able to concentrate on, I mean, if it were me, I would just not even have the totals. And then, hey, year 27, that first column, that's what our
Okay.
budget is for that we're,
Yeah.
looking for. Now, the only thing about this presentation is this is a nice, wonderful breakout for technology. And then you come and you say, okay, HVAC replacements. You might want to break, not the whole 5 years. I actually love this slide because of its simplicity, but you might have, and I know it is all HVAC, but you might have the number for HVAC at Broad Rock, HVAC at Matunic, whatever they are. And then they can see that they're added up to that number. You might just want to do that on an additional slide saying, so the breakout of 2027 are for 3 HVACs or, whatever there are. Because if you do that, because the question's going to be, well, what buildings? What is the cost for each one? Are they all equal? So just add a slide for 2026 with some more detail, I think would be great.
Okay. And we have to, given that this is for the 6th, we'll have time to do that, and or if need be, recreate this chart in a manner that, conducive to the simple, to your suggested changes.
Can you move to the next slide? That one. Yes, thank you. I feel like suddenly my voice isn't projecting. Here we go. So my curiosity, I love this, by the way. I do agree with Carol, maybe a little bit more information per each number, but I just like that this is what we're shooting for. Question is, as we talked about, these are rolling items. If something should happen in 27, 28, and we need to, a boiler goes, windows break, whatever, and we need to include those. I'm assuming that roofing at 2 million isn't like a set number. This is just kind of a projected number.
Yep.
So if all of a sudden we have to do one thing, will it kill all the roofing or is it just one roof? You know, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like just maybe a,
It's ultimately what it comes down to is we've put it into these years as if everything were perfect, but in as well, so this year is a perfect is a perfect example where not only do we have HVAC being done, but we also have emergency roofing that needs to get done in coordination. So Broad Rock is getting another roof, so that ultimately most of these costs will also span multiple years. But to make sure that it's in the system, that we're getting reimbursement for it, this is how we've broken up those projects. It might be next year is like this year, HVAC and roofing. But in order to bucket those costs, that's how Mr. Ferrucci went with it and was consistent in his conversations with Brian at the town. But we can definitely add on to that. This was also in the attempt that we get to in year 3, 4, and 5 some very unrealistic numbers, especially for a local budget. I think we were getting to 9 million, 18 million. And so again, trying to show that assuming that this is there, that there's the need, and like, once again, being that good steward of taxpayer dollars, that again, we'd love to do it all, but we can't. And assuming we have fund balance, we're going to be reinvesting that into our schools, as well as then making sure that the taxpayer gets their reimbursement.
and we really want to drive that that particular point home. I think especially at this stage of the conversation, because the money, it opens the door for that conversation about how are we paying for capital improvement projects going forward. Currently, we use our fund balance, which is why we make sure we have a good fund balance so that we can do this without having to go back to the town. Then the reimbursement comes in. The question then continues is that money goes back to the town, but it should also be, well, it goes to the debate of will that money go for the high school debt, or will it go back into a bucket so we can continue to tap into it for our capital improvement plan, because we do have X number of millions of dollars of work that needs to be done in our elementary schools. So it can become a convoluted conversation pretty quickly, but I think it's really key to drive home. This is why we keep the fund balance the way we do, because we need to do these things. But is there another way to do it?
Absolutely.
I agree with what Ms. Masnianti said. I think we need to probably more than once have the conversation about the reimbursement funds, and they go back to the town, and maybe they could be kept like sort of in a separate account or something. And we could have some kind of a discussion about a certain percentage of those reimbursements going to pay towards the debt, and other of that money being giving back to us specifically for our capital projects.
So what we could do, so on this current slide, look to have some more detail in terms of where, get into some specifics. What we could also do is on the next slide, we could potentially do for consideration and go through an exercise of, if 2 million out of fund balance achieved, here's at the 35% reimbursement rate. If that anything spent out of fund balance towards a reimbursable project went into a restricted capital improvement fund, look how quickly we might be able to get to numbers that, quite frankly, we can't. So even in year number 5, we're still spending 2 million, not 2.6, but if we were getting reimbursed 35% on 2 million each year, we could potentially get there, as well as lay down the foundation for, especially once we start to have an athletic complex that needs to be replaced. How are we going to replace the fields? Whose obligation is that? Well, should we, or can we start creating a restricted use fund? And we can put that into consideration as a way to get the discussion started potentially.
I really like that idea.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, talk about how the money, if it's for reimbursable expenses, it just keeps compounding on itself. If we get 350,000 back on a $1 million project, now we get, use that money, now we get 35% of that back, and then 35% of that back. And so it just keeps funding itself in a small part, but at least in some part. So it just brings more money in at 35% rate, which is pretty good return. So that'd be my argument for having all that reimbursement go back to us. But I know there are other competing priorities and other competing needs that might come into play. But if we can at least get some of that back, have some kind of revolving capital fund that would to keep getting those reimbursements, it would be really, I think it'd be really beneficial financially for us and for the town.
So I'll create a slide regarding that, show that exercise, and for consideration, discussion, and then, okay. And then we would end with any questions. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you again. So that brings us to C, discussion, school building committee update. Kate?
So currently it really is just kind of moving right along. They're pretty much in the finishing up the foundation over these next couple of weeks. As we go into January, they'll start really moving forward once first we're going to get our final GMP. We're going to have that discussion at the school building committee table January 8th. And then it will be presented to the town council on, I believe it's the 12th, if I'm not mistaken, that next Monday. I have requested for Michael and the project team to get us on the books with the project team for school committee to do a formal presentation to kind of do this is where we are, this is what we're looking at. Because once the final GMP comes through, then they can start signing contracts and receiving materials such as steel. And then in January, we're going to start to see some real progress go on out there with the seals going in. And that's when it's pretty cool and impactful now. And you look at the foundation and everything that's going on. But once you see the steel beams start going up, it's going to be pretty cool. So right now, everything is moving along according to schedule. Because it has been so cold, there has been a little bit of slip time, but it's all built in, it's all factored in to their schedule, knowing that it's New England and it gets cold in December and the ground freezes. Although I will tell you that the ground has frozen much earlier than it has in the past. So I have my stakes in my pocket because I was nailing down my reindeer in my front yard. Michael, please jump in if you feel like I'm missing a very important point, but we're just kind of moving along, and I really look forward to the project team to come in front of our committee and give us a really great update as to where we are. The last thing I want to say is I don't know if I can really express how awesome our project team is. we meet with them every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock for like just kind of a little like, hey, this is where we are and this is what we're looking at and kind of agenda building and whatnot. But Gilbane kicks off every meeting with like a safety moment. And sometimes it's like, it's raining out. Don't forget to buckle your seats or put air in your tires or whatever. And today it was a really thoughtful one about frostbite. And you don't think about it with our construction workers, with the temperatures that they've been experiencing in the past couple days. They're out there in this weather from 7 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And but the team is really cognizant of that, giving them, time to come in, warm up, take care of business, but being aware because your fingertips in your ears and your nose, like you don't really think about that when I don't when I'm at home under my blanket with a nice warm laptop on my lap and a dog curled up next to me complaining complaining about how cold it is. But they're really a thoughtful group. And Mark Moore from Gilbane announced to us today that they did a food drive over the past few weeks, and they were delivering what they collected to the Johnny Cake Center. And Frank Gallucci, one of their really kind of high level guys, joined us today, and he shared that they pick a site every once in a while to just come to just make sure everything's working well. And these past couple of weeks, they were here at our site, and they got here at like 6 o'clock, and they go through like these like stretches with the team, make sure that to kind of prevent injuries and make sure people are warm and safe. And it's just we're very lucky. And especially most of them are from our community and or nearby. But I feel like this is just who they are. And I think it's just today it really kind of hit me what an awesome team we're working with and how detailed they get into and how much they're staying on track and like how much work the workers themselves putting in to make sure that this gets built and the drive is on time and under budget. It just is a really awesome experience to work with these guys and how thoughtful they are. So I felt like I wanted to share that as well. So if anybody has any questions for me or I'll do my best, or Michael, if you feel like I'm missing something, please chime in.
All right, that will bring us to Stuart's favorite part of the meeting. Stuart,
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes.